John the Dupe or Dope, or Fieldwork in Paradise. Professor John MacLeod of Polar University in northern Norway was a man of high intellect and even higher optimism. Armed with a $1 million grant to study the vulnerable women of the East, John set off for Thailand to conduct fieldwork. Naturally, his rigorous academic methodology involved spending extensive time along Bangkok's Sukhumvit Road and the bustling, sun-soaked alleyways of Hua Hin in the south. Lola. It was in Hua Hin's infamous Soi 80, specifically at an open-air bar run by a woman named Oyer, that John met Lola, who was Oi's cousin. It wasn't long before family harmony collapsed. A feud erupted between the cousins, partly over bar politics, but mostly over John. Oi, it turned out, had every intention of borrowing John for herself. The sacred unwritten laws of bar girl etiquette. Among the unwritten rules governing a foreign visitor, and bar girl dynamics, one rule reigns supreme: if a man frequents a bar and buys drinks for the same girl 2 or 3 times, he is officially designated as her pua, her husband. Consequently, other hostesses are strictly off limits. Any girl caught poaching another's pua risks triggering a kaulowai, a full-blown catfight involving screeching, pulled extensions, and flying flip-flops. Of course, after 3 or 4 gin and tonics, Professor John was hardly a vigilant keeper of marital fidelity. On one sticky evening, while John perched on a stool out front, I casually slithered onto his lap. She was a diminutive, dangerously pretty flirt who knew exactly what she was doing. Her goal wasn't just John's attention, it was to torment Lola, who sat nearby maintaining an icy, Jayen, cool heart facade while quietly burning holes through Oi with her eyes. The Cold War eventually boiled over. Oi retaliated in true drama queen fashion. She packed all of Lola's earthly belongings into black trash bags and tossed them into the dusty alley. The creative enterprise. Lola was homeless and broke, so John stepped up like a true Western knight-errant, financing a modest room for her down in Soi 82. When Professor John returned to Norway, he faithfully wired monthly rent via Western Union. This arrangement came to an abrupt halt when Western Union banned John from their services. The company never offered a formal explanation, but John suspects Lola was receiving concurrent rent subsidies from half a dozen other gentlemen across Western Europe, setting off every fraud alarm in international banking. To justify the ongoing cash flow, Lola had agreed to collect local cultural stories for John's research project. This initiative was an instant disaster. Hindered by limited English, Lola simply copy-pasted low-grade romance fiction off the internet, ran it through early-generation Google Translate, and passed it off as original Isen folklore. Never one to abandon a bad idea, John then hired Lola's friend, Montana, to write an epic novel about an innocent village girl migrating to the big lights of Bangkok. This proved equally chaotic. Montana was a grand master of rambling, surreal tangents, leaving John with a completely incomprehensible stack of pages. To this day, that dusty manuscript sits in John's Oslo archive, a monument to misplaced academic optimism that he still promises to review someday. The unwitting brothel owner. Eventually, John upgraded Lola to a spacious 2-story townhouse, rationalizing that it would serve as his personal research base whenever he visited Hua Hin, saving him a fortune in hotel bills. Upon arriving for his next field site inspection, he went over to inspect his investment. The house featured a lovely shaded porch, a cozy spot for an afternoon single beer. Curiously, the townhouse was also bustling with half a dozen stunning, exceptionally tall, and remarkably well-proportioned young women moving in and out. As John sat on the terrace sipping his cold beer, a procession of nervous-looking foreign men began wandering down the alley. First came a tall, lanky Finn sweating profusely in the tropical heat. "I is noi here today," he stammered, wringing his hands. "No. She go back to Isen," Lola barked dismissively, shooing him away. A parade of similarly anxious characters turned up over the afternoon, all asking for various women who had mysteriously gone back to the village. Professor John considered himself a man of sharp academic deduction, but he was painfully slow on the uptake. Lola never explicitly explained the business model, but it slowly dawned on him that these lovely ladies weren't just catering to the neighborhood's nervous tourists, they were also serving Lola herself, who later casually confessed a personal preference for buxom women. Lola's harem. In short, using Polar University's research funding and Western Union remittances, John had unwittingly financed a thriving commercial enterprise, a neighborhood brothel, and Lola's personal harem. Over the years, Lola would try to persuade John to invest in various cafes, massage shops, and noodle stands, all obvious fronts for similarly colorful ventures. Postscript. Years later, back in Norway, the university board finally called Professor John in for an audit to account for the $1 million grant. Terrified of facing fraud charges or professional ruin, John nervously submitted his final report, a glossy, 300-page treatise titled Structural Survival Tactics of Marginalized Women in Modern Thailand. To his absolute shock, the committee praised it as a groundbreaking masterpiece of contemporary ethnography. The book won the university's prestigious academic gold medal for uncovering unprecedented levels of female economic self-empowerment, and John was promptly awarded tenure. Naturally, he dedicated the book to Lola, the most successful CEO he had ever managed to fund.